And Jill, could you scroll? Excuse my lighting here. At the last meeting I was at, they asked me if I was in a safe house, but I'm not. I had a flare up of my arthritis, and I'm secluded to my room up here upstairs. So I'm without a lot of resources. So thank you. That's what I wanted, was the land acknowledgement. Thanks, Jill. So before we begin, we acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional and unceded territory of the Lummi, Nooksack, Samish, and Semiahmoo people who have cared for and tended this land since time immemorial. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. We pay respect to their elders, past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events. So with that, I'd like to call the steering committee meeting to order. And our first item, can you put that back up, Jill, just for a second? Is the Justice Project element in the community health assessment.
Just to let everyone know, Perry had asked that this item be held till the April meeting, so we can get the relevant health department staff to attend.
Okay, Perry?
Yeah, good morning. I did specifically, Barry, I reached out to Lynette Bennett. She is the community, Whatcom County Health and Community Services Community and Organizational Development Manager, and the comprehensive health plan as well as the assessment are in her purview. So she is certainly interested in talking to the steering committee and obviously the justice component of that. Next time, she's also going to bring along, I think that Amy Hockenberry. She is part of our health assessment and information team. She was responsible for the comprehensive health plan and a community health plan and community health assessment the last go around. And so they're going to be prepared. I discussed this with Lynette and just what the IPRTF needed, and so she is going to be available in April.
Okay, that sounds good, Perry. Thank you.
You bet.
So we'll move that item to our April meeting. The next is the Justice Project Implementation Plan, and specifically around the JPOP, which is the Justice Project Oversight. What's the last one? Planning Committee, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I always have trouble with that last P. Anyway, the council appointed 3 members on our council meeting Tuesday night, and we still have the application process is open. And Jill, I think, can speak a little bit to what she sees going forward with that item.
Thank you, Barry. I think we'll just continue to collect, reach out to people and ask them to submit applications. So if any of you know of anyone who might be interested and who is qualified for those appointed positions, please reach out to them. We're not seeing a lot of applications roll in, so likely those positions will get filled by us reaching out to folks. Perry?
The other thing we talked about was reaching out to the task force members, right? We talked about that in yesterday's planning meeting.
Yes. So a number of the task force members can fill those those appointed positions, are qualified for those. So the planning team discussed possibly inviting current task force members to apply for those JPOP positions. And the other thing is, I'm proposing that at the March meeting, we go ahead and get confirmation of those permanent members who will be attending JPOP as well.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll be soliciting that from the membership of the IPTRF. Perry.
The last meeting, I brought up just a point, and I'll go back and take a look. I didn't happen to attend the Tuesday council meeting, but in terms of the individuals that were appointed by council, certainly the positions make a lot of sense to me in terms of that particular list. But I did have some concerns that individuals that had been considered. I think there was a general. I'm not certain if there was a general application to the IPRTF or to JPOP specifically, but the individuals that had put their hat in the ring.
You're muted, Perry.
Relative to individuals that have put their hat in the ring for behavioral health provider and substance use disorder treatment provider. Both are actually contracted with the county at this point in time. I don't know if that creates a conflict of interest, but I did want to bring that particular point to bear. The other thing that I would like to touch base on, certainly my manager and myself are both very interested in being a part of the JPOP. But in terms of the permanent IPRTF positions, although of course, council members and executive's office, jail administrator, et cetera, are outlined. The health and community services is not. And so possibly in the appointed positions, obviously as a recovery subject matter expert, I'm just not certain of what steps to take, or if there's even a possibility of a consideration for a permanent IPRTF position to be created for Whatcom County Health and Community Services, whether that's the Response Systems Division, obviously Melora with Grace and Lead and, and et cetera, or, some other route. But anyway, wanting to express the just the detail of the applicants also having current contracts with the health department for behavioral health services, and also the possibility in terms of, just position. So I'll stop there.
I can speak to the second one and a little bit to the first one, but the second one being the membership of human services, your request. The planning team yesterday talked about that, and everybody was we kind of were ambivalent. We want your participation for sure. We kind of landed on yes. We think that a permanent membership might be the right way to go. That may take reopening the ordinance and adding, but we do that all the time, especially for new committees where we're adjusting the membership and so on. But I'll let Jill. She's got her hand up.
Yeah, one thing that we discussed briefly at planning team yesterday was whether or not the committee isn't able to add additional members like the other IPRTF committees are. So if that is the case, then I don't see any problem with, of course, slotting Perry, you and or Melora in on the committee. That way, that would probably be the easiest thing to do. One question from yesterday was whether or not you and Melora specifically wanted to be on the committee to vote for voting purposes, or whether Kayla was anticipating that not just you guys, but a lot of the other departments who are also running projects would regularly attend anyway and participate that way and give presentations, etc. So I think we just weren't sure whether or not it was important to you to be voting members.
Thanks, Jill. I really appreciate that. I think that that's absolutely true. Obviously, other divisions that would be involved as that whole process moved forward. I think in regards to the specific question, that would be the preference for Melora and I, if we have that opportunity for that, that permanent position to be voting members, and or obviously to be able to access the individuals that might be bringing presentations, obviously supporting that whole process for the JPOP as well.
Okay, that's good to know. And to answer your first question, I don't recall if it was you or Kayla that I got the message about the contractors sitting on these committees. My understanding was that would probably not be best for the finance advisory board.
Yeah, that was my other part, and that's what I remember too, getting contacted by Kayla about the finance advisory committee. And we had talked about contacting Jan Rose and or Margaret down at the North Sound Behavioral Health to see if there was an option to have one of them be on that finance committee. But I hadn't come up in my conversations around the J-pop.
Right. Great thought process there. And again, I think that the expertise of the individuals as far as behavioral health providers and as far as substance use disorder providers, super valuable. I just wanted to make sure before we got too far down the road, that I had made sure and made reference to that. Maybe, I don't know if you have the information, Jill. I would love if it's okay for you to send me an email just of the individuals that the council did appoint, the positions and individuals that you did appoint, if I can be so bold to ask that.
I mean, yeah, it's public information. I can just tell
Yeah.
you right now, it was Hannah Sloan for the reentry specialist position. Corbett Hansen for the SUD provider position, and Robert Sullivan for the recovery subject matter expert position.
All very knowledgeable individuals.
Okay, anything more on the J-pop, that piece, the appointment? Is there anything else left on J-pop, Jill?
I don't have anything else for that committee.
Okay, what's next on the agenda? I don't have it in front of me.
Give me 1 minute to screen share
It's,
here.
Justice Project Implementation, IPRTF leadership, I think.
Okay, the leadership discussion. So at this point, we have our two nominations that came from the last meeting. That was Peter Fraser and Bertie Safford. Welcome, Bertie, to our meeting today. And then also Heather Flaherty has been nominated by the prosecutor Ritchie. That came via email to Jill, right, Jill?
Yes, and just to clarify, the nominations needs to happen within a meeting, so the nomination formally will happen at the meeting in the March meeting. But yes, you're correct. We got an email from Prosecutor Ritchie saying he plans to nominate Heather.
Is she getting documents together like I know Peter and Bertie did?
I have invited her to submit something. I
Okay.
haven't seen anything yet.
Okay. Anybody else have anything on the leadership? We just put this in here because it's been of great interest to this committee. Dan?
Yeah, can we just go over the process here for the it's March 18th is the meeting, is that correct?
Yeah.
Coming
Yes.
up. So can we just like walk through this real quick? So we do nominations at that meeting. Are we voting at that meeting as well, or does that happen in April?
I think we had planned on voting in that meeting.
Okay.
And you're chairing, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of get that straight in terms of who's doing what, and I don't want to step on anyone's toes, but happy to volunteer because we're without co-chairs, so just whatever I can do to help. It's basically
Okay.
where I'm at.
Jill?
Yeah, I just wanted to suggest to Dan in terms of taking the vote, what we've done at county council and seems to work. We've got 3 nominees, then we would just go around the room and ask everyone to vote for their 2 folks. I would ask everyone to have some patience. I will not be at that meeting, so Jenna's going to be running that for me. So just don't rush it, go slow, and allow everyone to make sure we have an accurate vote count.
How many members do we have total for task force? And I know not everyone might be there, but how many people do we have at this
Say
point?
we currently have 27 members, I believe.
Okay.
And for this kind of a vote, we would want a roll call vote, right, Jill?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll make sure you have that, Dan. Anything else on the leadership? Okay, let's move on. What's next? I actually can find it now.
It's the agenda for the March meeting, which I just had open and then lost it. Give me a second here. The meeting's pretty full already. The first item, of course, is the and the second item, we've got a number of presentations. The first is Caleb Erickson on the State Joint Legislative Task Force on Jail Standards. The second is Sheriff Tank on accreditation for jail facility and operations. The third is Melora and John Dukes on the Sheriff's Office Co-Responder Program. And then will be the Justice Project Implementation Plan update and committee updates.
And then that leadership piece, the election.
No, the election is the first thing on the agenda.
First thing, okay.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty full to me. I don't know what everybody else thinks.
I can certainly talk with Melora and John. I don't know, although I think that things are going very well in the co-responder program, we could push that presentation to the April meeting. If I can certainly have that discussion with them. I don't think they'll be heartbroken over that.
I don't know. I would prefer to keep it in if we can.
Yeah, great. Was just offering some space. So by all means.
I guess we could plan on it and then just put you at the end of the agenda. So if it needs to be kicked out to the next meeting, we could. To make sure everybody had time for questions.
In terms of the committee updates, there really are only two, steering and the joint meeting. So there's not going to be a big go around of all the committees.
And steering's always really short.
Yeah.
Right.
Jill, what is the you said that the sheriff's office or the sheriff wanted to do a presentation on what was it, jail certification or some kind of
accreditation for the jail
accreditation
facility and operations. Yes.
Is that current or is that future? What's the content?
Sheriff Tank has given a presentation, I believe, to council. Is that correct, Barry, about the need and his desire and his plans to make sure jail facilities and operations are accredited, which is something that hasn't been done or hasn't been done in a while. I don't.
Yeah, he didn't really give a presentation, but he mentioned it for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So I think that's probably just about wraps it for that meeting. It's unless anybody else has got a burning desire to put anything else on. I think we're good, Jill.
Great, thank you, everyone. The next agenda item is just other business. I wanted to remind everyone that the April meeting begins at 1 p.m. It should be on your calendars as such as well.
The April steering or the April task force?
April steering.
Steering, okay. Anybody got anything for other business?
I can just report in that the mayor issued an executive order about a month ago for patrol emphasis downtown, and we're seeing more and more of that happening. I think it's rolling out pretty well. And then the other part of part two of that discussion is that the Walmart encampment, if you probably read it in the paper, that the city is pursuing action to try to get folks moved out of that subject parcel, which is a 20-acre piece of property out there, and hopefully into services. So that's kind of what's happening at the city level.
Thanks, Dan. Jill?
Yeah.
Thank you. Speaking of the mayor, Dan, I'm hoping she can attend the meeting on March 18th, or if she can, maybe she wants to designate a proxy to attend on her behalf if for these meetings that she can't get to. I know she's new and getting up to speed. So I don't know if you have a handle yet on whether or not the IPRTF is on her radar at all. But if there's anything that I can do to help facilitate either her or her representative to attend, please let me know.
Sure. I won't speak for her, but I would suggest reaching out to Janice Keller, who is the communications director person that and she could probably, either get the mayor or a proxy to attend.
Great, I will do that. Thank you.
Yep.
Raylene?
Yeah, thanks. So the the Washington State Council of Public Defense has submitted new standards to the Washington State Bar Association and the Board of Governors. It's scheduled to be voted on today. It would decrease caseloads for public defense attorneys by 70% over a 3-year period, which would have a drastic impact on this county. St. Paul did submit a letter to the State Bar and Board of Governors. That went out yesterday. And there was also letters from Pierce County and a couple other different entities to the State Bar Association to reconsider.
Yeah.
We're hoping that's going to be stayed and they're not going to vote on it and they can take more comment before it goes towards the Supreme Court if it passes the State Bar. But it's something we'll want to watch closely.
Yeah, and I also saw a letter from the Washington State Association of Counties that has taken same position that St. Paul has taken. Yeah, this is something that's very concerning. It certainly, we know that public defense is overworked, but this probably isn't the right way to attack the problem, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Jill?
Thank you. I just want to put one thing on the steering committee's radar. One of the IPRTF's appointed members, Jen Lockwood, a behavioral health and services position member, has not attended the task force since mid 2022. I reached out to her via email the end of February to try to re-engage her, and I will be continuing those efforts, but I wanted to put it on the steering committee's radar that this is something that we might need to, I might need to have one of you reach out to her if I'm not successful, and start thinking about how to get her to re-engage.
Okay. Dan?
Yeah, I think just along those lines, Mike Parker and I have had conversations about membership for the behavioral health committee. And, we lost a few people. We lost a provider, Mike Smith from Lake Whatcom. He is doing his own business now. And Chris Cochran from the school district. So that's the kind of the upstream kind of person that we're relying on for juvenile information. And we are acutely aware that we want to diversify that committee as best as possible and to include lots of different voices, including impacted communities and providers for behavioral health. So I just wanted to put that in front of the steering committee that we are actively working towards recruiting new members for that committee.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Raylene?
Yeah, sorry, you might have touched on this earlier. I was a little bit late. We had emergencies going on down here. But I did want to mention that Barry and Ben Ellenboss had a meeting on the fentanyl epidemic and the state of emergency yesterday. I thought it was a very productive meeting and a good start. So, thanks.
Yeah, we've had 3 of those workshops. We have one more small one to go. Yesterday, we did have the mayor. She attended, and as well as the tribes. So I had a great conversation. She laid out a little bit around that executive order that Dan spoke of. And we talked about the need to coordinate between the county council and the city council. So Dan, I think you and I need to connect at some point and talk about what we can do. Go ahead.
Yeah, Barry, I just wanted to kind of chime in here real quick. And what are you all seeing on your end of things in terms of, I mean, we're getting between 3 and 5 ODs a day, and not everyone results in fatality, but some do. What are you seeing at the county end?
Perry, I'm not sure. Do you have any numbers?
You know, I don't have at the tip of my fingers, but certainly a lot of discussion. What Dan is describing sounds pretty close. You know, some obviously some concerns and definitely some activity around discussions of additional steps that can be taken. Oftentimes Mike Hilly, honestly has some of the most current
Yeah.
data that's documented.
I know we had a kind of an anecdotal report. Well, not really anecdotal, but Judge Anderson from District Court said that at one point she was losing practically one case. One case was being dismissed a week because the defendant passed away from an overdose. So that is
Wow.
a shock. That's shocking.
Yeah. Yeah, if you look at the OD stats, OD death stats, and Mike Hilly has that information, it's pretty astounding. It's a huge increase year over year. Good news, and I don't want to share too much here, but I think that we're looking at a regional provider. Pardon me, sorry. Provider that might be willing to partner with Bellingham and Whatcom County to provide some treatment options. And so we're seeing some good news, I guess, on that front, on the treatment front. So let's, fingers crossed, and let's, keep moving forward here. But this is really, this is a game changer for our downtown community. And we're also, I met with some folks in Cordata, some business folks, and they're seeing quite an impact out there as well. So it's not just downtown, it's also in the Cordata area as well.
Mike, welcome.
Sorry I'm late, guys. I had another meeting I attend to, and I'm not usually double booked, but I was double booked. Very quickly, this is pretty granular, but this is totally aligned the lines of what you all were talking about. Recently had a call with Unity Care Northwest and their substance use treatment program. We had some folks on from the Whatcom County Health Department, and we talked a little bit about harm reduction, right, and needle exchange program. And one of the observations is that most people, I guess that the use of needles is really decreasing. Fentanyl doesn't work super well in needles, and we have most people using that by smoking it or other ingesting means. And yet our county program with harm reduction supplies only does needles, and we're currently not doing pipes. And I think some communities have found that challenging to give out pipes, bubble pipes, as harm reduction materials. But as casualties mount, I just wanted to put that out here and bury this. And Dan, I know this is partly a political calculus. I just want to put a plug in for that. I think one of the things that people are really advocating users do is take a test hit. And I know this is super granular to bring up at this meeting, but I think that's an important thing. And obviously a needle does not allow you to do that. You get a full dose, and a lot of the folks that are overdosing did do a full dose. So and I don't know if this is the proper form for that. I just want to bring up, I think we have to look at any given possible intervention tweak to see if we can stem this tide. And that was a reasonable one that I thought I would just brought up and just get your take off the top of your head. Does this sound reasonable for our county to do and to start offering that, and really, I think it would help our harm reduction message. But I'll stop there. And Perry, if this is probably something you're familiar with too, or at least have heard calls for, but I'll stop there.
Dan?
Yeah, go
Oh,
ahead,
go ahead,
Dan.
Barry. Go ahead, Barry, if you want to respond to that.
All I wanted to say in that is I've certainly been part of some discussions. I mean, obviously this is a different division than the division that I am working in. And if I also, if I heard correctly, some interest in interpretation of the Blake fix and just the legalities around some of the questions of what can be done. I don't think that it was necessarily, smoking tools, that sort of thing. But I can certainly, communicate more specifically on these questions with colleagues and bring this back to the behavioral health subcommittee or another setting just to kind of get a more recent take on it. I've been involved in some discussions. It was a little while back, so I think that my information may be dated, to be honest. But it's a great, point of discussion, I think, Mike, and I appreciate that.
Dan?
Yeah, I guess a question for Mike and Perry. You're clearly the experts here in terms of harm reduction models. What I don't understand is I get harm reduction when it comes to certain types of SUD, like even heroin, but when it comes to fentanyl, is harm reduction even on the table when it comes to something that is so potent and could be lethal, and we don't always know what's in the tablet or in the pill. So like, in your opinion, in your professional provider opinions, how does it work? I mean, can we do harm reduction for fentanyl, or is it just off the table? That's to
Well, I'm
Mike.
not an SUDP, so I would probably recuse myself from having a more knowledgeable. I mean, I've done some research with DESC, and I think some folks have gone down there. And obviously, one of the things that their street teams do when they meet with folks that are using fentanyl and various drugs in the community is they try to figure out, are there ways that we can help you be safer? And that includes don't use alone and the standard things that Joe Fuller and his group do a really good job putting out. I think most of those opportunities, Dan, to get at your question of can you do harm reduction with fentanyl, I think a little bit, yeah, but I'm not an expert. I think one of the huge things is by testing and having a small test hit, you can see what the reaction is to the body. And because, like you said, you don't know what's in the tablet, it is completely variable. Some would be strong enough to kill you in one thing. But taking a small test hit would be a way to gauge its intensity for the user. And increasingly, I think the population that uses these types of drugs is increasingly smoking it anyways. So being able to, supply that so that they're not turning to a different method which wouldn't promote the ability to sample. I'll stop there. Again, I'm not an SUDP. I know what I'm hearing from folks that are more professional and have more knowledge and skill on the streets. And we're looking at Opportunity Council with how do we become a better community partner in working with people who use drugs? How do we be a better partner with Whatcom County and its resources? And how do we spread that harm reduction lens? And you're right, I think it does call a lot of the harm reduction techniques that have been out there for a long time, it brings them into question. But I believe there's still some merit to that. Perry, do you know much about that? I know you have more background in SUDP than I do.
Sure. No, and I tend to agree, Mike, with what you were saying initially. Yes, I would say there is absolutely harm reduction interventions that can occur with fentanyl, as folks are fully aware. Basically, what we're seeing is even with methamphetamine that there's fentanyl, in that substance. We're seeing that sometimes with cannabis, and those kinds of some components. So, obviously information and the other, components of, don't use alone and be able to test this and naloxone and some of those pieces. And I think that if I'm understanding correctly, Dan, I mean, it's really like, do we need to reevaluate what what steps and activity we're taking in regards to harm reduction as a county, and a municipality in the ever-changing world, of that, because it is very rapidly changing. And I think that there's some value, to that as well, to evaluate that. What we see is, demand tends to drive, that whole process. And it would be interesting to get some current information on what is, the syringe exchange, and what has it been. Of course, those statistics are kept, and what has it been, and what is it? Because I think that anecdotally we all know that the preference of induction is smoking at this point in time. And then what risk does that bring up, and how can we have an impact in terms of safety, and also in terms of being available in terms of resources for consideration of detox or abstinence.
I think to Mike's earlier point about the syringe exchange just kind of being sort of outdated at this point. I want to make sure that the behavioral health committee for this task force is ahead of the curve when it comes to, if we're looking at harm reduction models, what does that look like when it comes to the use of fentanyl? And what I worry about is the introduction of other drugs like carfentanil, benzodiazepine, xylazine, things like that we just don't really have a handle on, and we don't have a treatment modality for. So I guess that's a concern. And then the other piece is, I think that we need to get a handle on, if we're going to be recommending to county council what we're asking for harm reduction. We just need to make sure that we're 100% solid. That's it. That's where I'm coming from. So.
And that's a big discussion we've had in our workshops around this resolution, is where's the balance between harm reduction and some of the criminal justice pieces. And kind of the generalities is, we want to be able to treat the addicts and treat addiction and punish distribution and sales. So I think that's kind of where the big picture looks right now. But Dan, you're so right. Some of these harm reduction is so important, but where's the balance that's safe, that's effective? A lot of unknowns.
No, that makes a total sense. Since we're on that discussion of harm reduction, I think another emerging practice, and some of this stuff is so new, Dan, it very much to your point, things are shifting, or Perry, I think you said it, things are shifting so fast that it's hard to stay in touch with. But one of the other things that I'm hearing, and I know that, Dan, you're talking about treatment resources coming to the community. I think that's really important. One of the things that we're hearing about in other communities is street teams. So Perry, this would be more in your response systems division kind of angle, but you have street teams going out that could do sublingual Suboxone and get somebody started right away. So sometimes, that and it could be an infraction that brings that worker with Sublocade. So it could be like diversion right then and there, who might be willing to do that. But being able to induct people into recovery oriented programs on the street at the moment, I mean, I think that's something that Whatcom County, if Perry, correct me if I'm wrong, really doesn't have much capacity to do at this point. But I think it could be another thing. So maybe more important than bubble pipes from syringe exchange in terms of harm reduction supplies. That's a really granular small need. I think getting people in front of users at the time of either infraction or, Dan, as you mentioned, overdosing, and being able to have that person equipped right then and there to make that difference. It is also something really worth exploring.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding was, at least there's, a lot of discussions about the downtown safety center and those possibilities of, those kinds of interventions or processes really coming to bear in that particular framework. Again, I'm not directly involved in that, but I know that those have been the discussions. And again, Mike Healy is just a great source of knowledge and honestly energy around that, saying individuals don't want to go to the hospital. They don't necessarily, at the point in time that they're experiencing an overdose and being responded to, want to go to detox. But is there a place that they could go to just to get some very quick stabilization, possibility of induction, as a discussion, be really aware of the resources that are in the community, et cetera. And so again, I think that was the thought process and design around the safety center discussion.
I see one of our new members has her hand up. Bertie, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I attended the Whatcom All Hands, or it gets All Hands Whatcom webinar on policy around the fentanyl crisis on Monday. And one of the things I learned is that Olympia apparently has a very successful walk-in Suboxone treatment center that gets at some of those needs because it eliminates most of the access problems. And apparently it's been going on for some time quite successfully. There was a Dr. Grandy from the Olympia area who was attending the webinar, and she was involved in starting it. So I have some contact information. But that might be a model worth looking at. Because the other thing I heard from treating physicians on the webinar is that if somebody is seriously using fentanyl like an overdose, it sometimes takes 2 or 3 days to get them stabilized on buprenorphine. It's a little different than the way we do it for other opioids. And so again, I think there are some models beginning to appear around Washington that would be worth looking at.
Thanks, Bertie. Dan?
Yeah, just for context, Bertie, and for the committee, there's a clinic called Comprehensive Treatment Center on Northwest. It's located in what used to be the Northwood Hall, and many of us on the call have eaten plenty of chicken lunches there.
Yes.
For City Club. Anyway, so I went and did a tour with Dr. Greg Thompson. He's the county health doctor or physician. And we did a tour there probably, I don't know, like 3 weeks ago, something like that. And they do walk-in treatment, and they treat up to 330 patients at that clinic. And so we do have that resource in Bellingham. And then Lummi is also has maintained a Suboxone and methadone treatment facility for some time now, and they're expanding for tribal members at Lummi at their kind of their main campus, so that resource is there as well. And then, like I mentioned before, we've got some incoming resources coming into Bellingham, hopefully within about 5 or 6 months. So just wanted to address your concern there, Bertie.
Well, thank you very much. Dr. Thompson was actually one of the facilitators there and didn't mention it, but I appreciate the context.
Thank you.
Dan, really quick, and I know this isn't your program, but I really appreciate your knowledge on it, and glad that you're keeping so abreast of that. But is that 24/7? I think one of the things, or 7 days a week, even if it's not 24/7, is 7 days a week. One of the things that was portrayed to me was that there are walk-in services, but that they're patchwork. They're sometimes offered by, like, CCS as a walk-in day, and Unity Care as a walk-in day, and it feels kind of patchwork. But I'm wondering about the one that you're talking about. It's in the Northwoods Hall. Is that a 7-day-a-week operation?
No, not to my knowledge.
It's
I think
not.
it's a 5-day-a-week operation, and I agree that we have patchwork. I don't understand how treatment modalities happen over the weekend, for example. Like, like sometimes they're if the person's ready to receive a couple of doses for Saturday and Sunday, then they can do that. But if they're not, like, what happens to that patient? What I mean, do they just suffer through the weekend, or do they relapse? I just don't understand. I mean, I'm quite frustrated, to be quite frank, with what we have right now in our community. I think that we could be doing a lot more, and we should be doing 24/7 access, Mike. I think that's got to happen. We have to get to that point.
Yes, addiction doesn't just follow work hours. So
Nope.
It does it. And I understand that organizations are really doing their best to even have those open access days. It does make billing challenges for them. I just want to empathize and not complain. I think the fact that we have open access at all is huge to recovery and is great. What I'd love to see is that available all the time in a downtown area by a mobile team. So you don't even have to go to a physical site. It can come to you. And at the time of, let's say, an infraction made with a police officer or the art team, you can just call somebody and get somebody there right away within minutes. Now that is where we're going to really be hitting the rubber, the rubber hits the road in terms of reversing some of these overdoses, getting people into recovery, and hoping that we don't have to go see that same person the next day and the day again, which is happening, right? I mean, it's just the repeat in that is just so scary. Even when there's a bad batch through town, it's not enough to dissuade people, and that tells you how strong it is. And I think, yeah, I want to stop, but Bernie, thank you for bringing that up, and thank you for sharing the wisdom from those all hands summits. I mean, I think those things are moving us somewhere, but if somebody has participated in the MAC group, it never can feel fast enough. Let me just put it that way. It never feels fast enough. It never feels comprehensive enough. And sometimes you wonder, do we really understand the extent of this emergency? And Barry, I just want to just take a moment and just thank you for your work in getting an emergency declaration. I mean, I think it's things like this that is highlighting the importance of dealing with this, because we are dying.
Absolutely.
Every
I
day, we
mean,
are dying.
look at the hoops we went through during COVID. I mean, this is every bit as bad as that. So
Hey, I think that we have an opportunity here, at least for the behavioral health committee, and I don't want to speak for the other committees, but Mike, I think that well, everybody on the call here today, I think that we need to be a little more action oriented. And Mike, I like your ideas about can we make this thing mobile? Can we do the under the tongue treatment, of bringing Suboxone to the person that's in the commercial street parking garage that's using, or whatever, what have you. I think that that there's no other group in this community that's poised and ready to go, like the groups that we have here that are represented here on this call. And so I'd like to just put that out there, that I want our committee, behavioral health, because that's one that Mike and I chair, to be not just to make recommendations, but to like point towards solutions, like we did with Grace and LEAD and alternate response team. We did all those things. And so I would like to continue that, given the fact that we are in an epidemic, a crisis, unlike anything we've ever seen. And we have senior leadership here on this call that has declared that emergency. And so let's take the next step, which is the action to deliver on it. So that's my that's what I'm asking for today. And I know that's a huge leap, but I think that we can do it. And we've got the minds at the table. So that's what I want to do in the coming months, is to be generative when it comes to the outputs of what we do, not just have presentations come into the committee. Those are great, but I think that we have an opportunity to say, hey, look, we think that we have some solutions here. Here's how we could do it. And we have two council members here on the call, one from the county, one from the city, that could make that happen when it comes to resources. So that's where I'm coming from.
very good point, Dan. And I think, the county's plan is that the executive is going to issue an executive order once this resolution is passed and there's some policy guidance. But the executive resolution will have those action steps and they'll have resources behind them. So I totally agree with your plan.
Barry, from
Oh,
what you know, are the interventions that we've talked about on today's call, are they included in that plan?
I have a whole huge list that's being accumulated. So Dan, I'm not going to speak to any just single one because I don't have it in front of me. So
Yeah, no
But-
problem. I didn't know if you did or not, but I just wondered, because we brought up some pretty specific things. I just wondered if they made it. But
well, they probably will make it via this conversation, if nothing else. So,
Okay.
because IPTRF is a huge part of this. All right, Joe, we ready to move to public comment? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple of quick things that Tyler and Kayla wanted the steering committee to know. First of all, the county received the remaining grant funds or funding it needed for the 23-hour crisis relief center from the legislature. So that is funded. The other thing is that the executive's office will be giving a presentation to council at its meeting on March 19th on the interlocal agreements for jail for funding for jail funding and all of that with the small city or with all the cities. So if that's some information you're interested in attending and watching, it will likely be in council committee of the whole. I don't know for sure, and I don't know what time that meeting starts, but just be aware that that is a presentation that's coming up. And that's it for me. I'm hoping to chat with Barry and Jenna right quick after the meeting, if that's all right.
Yeah. So let's move to public comment.
Thank you. We do have a few attendees. If you would like to speak to the committee, please virtually raise your hand now. Go ahead, Stephen.
Hi, everybody. I'm violating my new principle to step back and not be so opinionated, but you've had such a rich discussion that I can't avoid throwing in some thoughts. Sort of sequentially, I hope somebody with some weight can engage with Mayor Lund and get her involved in the task force sooner rather than later. Seth was not an active discussant in the task force business, but he knew what was going on. He was present for the meetings, and when we needed his support, we had it. I think we need that even more from Mayor Lund. So I hope we can draw her in closer. Also, I guess this is to you, Barry, a possible agenda item for the task force in April. I think in a worthwhile way would be a presentation by the mayor and maybe others, Chief Mertzig or others, that would really talk about and flesh out what this downtown initiative is, because it seems important. They're putting a lot of emphasis on it, but mostly what I get is photo ops and a PR gloss to it. And it would be nice to have some substance, or at least get the task force's input on what features might be developed within that. I'd like to suggest, just as a former co-chair, that I think 21 or 22 months without seeing Jen Lockwood in a behavioral health slot tells you all you need to know about where that is on her priority list. And especially now, that's too important a seat there to waste a lot of time trying to overcome, other priorities that she must have. I'm not saying she's not doing worthwhile work outside of it, but the task force obviously isn't where her heart is. Lastly, I'm really interested in the discussion about harm reduction and the response to fentanyl needs. I'm sensing that there are a lot of these discussions that are staying in silos, and the task force isn't really hearing about the brainstorming and the program planning that's going on. And I'd just like to encourage everybody to bring some of these discussions up to the task force as a whole. The whole value of the task force to me is that people with specialized knowledge can share that across those silos. And I think this is an important area to do that in, and not the only one. And a lot of times our committee reports are, well, we talked about this topic, but they don't go into the details of that discussion or the options that are being considered in committees. And so I just encourage you all to bring those working discussions, even brainstorming discussions even, up to the task force, so that there's a broader awareness of what kind of work is being done on the ground floor of some of these issues. Thanks, guys.
Yep, thanks, Stephen. Anybody else?
I don't see anyone in our committee room. That looks like it's everyone. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We will be talking. We're adjourned.